on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump inaugurates a new board of peace at the World Economic Forum to support the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. Trump says the body will work alongside the United Nations and aims to shape Gaza's future, warning that Hamas must disarm or face consequences. US President Donald Trump meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the World Economic Forum in Davos, saying the war in Ukraine has to end. The meeting is confirmed by Ukraine's presidency as both leaders discuss diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. Meanwhile, US envoy Steve Witkoff says a lot of progress is made in Russia-Ukraine peace talks, with negotiations now focused on one remaining issue. This comes as Witkoff and Jared Kushner are set to travel to Moscow to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says allies will step up their presence in the Arctic under a framework deal with the US President Donald Trump. The move follows Trump dropping tariff threats and ruling out taking Greenland by force, with NATO commanders now finalizing security details. US Vice President J.D. Vance is visiting Minneapolis to support a major ICE operation and host a law and order roundtable after an ICE officer killed a 37-year-old mother. Democratic leaders warn the visit may escalate tension, calling it political theater in a divided city. Syria's government accuses the Kurdish-led SDF of attacks that killed 11 soldiers, but the group disputes the claims and blames at least one blast on Syrian troops. The incident risks derailing a 4-day ceasefire as Damascus pushes for the SDF to integrate into the state. ASEAN chair, the Philippines, says it will continue talks with opponents of Myanmar's military rulers and remains open to the outcome of the country's general elections without endorsing the vote. Official results so far show most seats go to a military-allied party ahead of the final round of voting. A commuter train crashed into a construction crane near Cartagena in southeastern Spain, with several people reportedly lightly injured. Emergency services say the train does not derail as Spain faces scrutiny after recent deadly rail accidents. All right, viewers, on to the top focus story. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has met with US President Donald Trump at the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. The meeting has now concluded. This comes after Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff expressed optimism about finalizing a peace deal with Russia. Witkoff mentioned that discussions are narrowing down to one key issue, believed to be related to Ukraine's industrial heartland in Donbas. Witkoff is scheduled to visit Moscow for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, US envoy Steve Witkoff has made a statement on the talk. Let's listen to that here.
Made a lot of progress. I think in the beginning of this process, there was a little bit of confusion. I was going to Moscow quite a bit, but I think it was important that we go there because we're at the end now, and I actually am optimistic. And I think we've got it down to one issue, and we have discussed iterations of that issue, and that means it's solvable. So if both sides want to solve this, we're going to get it solved.
All right, Ben Aries, former Moscow bureau chief at the Daily Telegraph, joins me now from Berlin. Ben, thanks very much for joining me here in this discussion. Of course, we're watching out the developments as they take place. What's your opinion? Are we really close to seeing peace arriving in Ukraine?
Well, if Witkoff says it's down to one last piece, then yes, we're very close. The issue is, I mean, there were a long list of conditions that came out of the initial US brokered talks with Russia 28-point list, that was whittled down to 27 at a Moscow meeting with Putin on December 3rd. But Putin said at that meeting, or in the wake of that meeting, look, they basically signed off on nearly all the points. The two sticking points have been security guarantees and territory. And listening to Witkoff's comments there, it sounds like the security guarantee thing may have been solved, that Zelenskyy was holding out for real Article like 5 NATO kind of security guarantees to ensure Ukraine's borders. And the US did suggest that they would offer a limited 10-year deal or 15-year deal, Zelenskyy was asking for, of that kind of military support should Russia re-invade. Would be a deterrent for a re-invasion, and therefore something that Zelenskyy could be assured that sovereignty of Ukraine would be continued. The big issue has been the Donbass, specifically the Donetsk region, and Russia doesn't control 15% of that, and in that 15% is a very extensive, powerful defensive line that Ukraine has built. And the Ukrainians, Zelenskyy, has been extremely reluctant to give that up. So that appears to be what they're talking about. And some sort of deal has to be done where the Ukrainian troops will withdraw from their defensive line. That does expose them to an attack on the rest of the country, right up to the river in the middle of the country, should they give that up. But if there's sufficient security guarantees, then that may be possible.
All right. Now, Trump has also issued a statement, Ben. I don't know if you have been able to read that, but he's saying he's had a good meeting with Zelenskyy. Are we to expect a similar outcome when the US envoys meet Putin later?
Well, it's significant, isn't it? I mean, that Zelenskyy wasn't actually expecting to have this meeting. He wasn't in Davos at all yesterday, and then Trump stood on the stage and said, I'm going to meet Zelenskyy today, and then he was told he's not there, and so Zelenskyy overnight arrived specifically to meet. But significantly, Witkoff and Kushner are on their way to Moscow and are going to meet Putin tomorrow. So whatever was said between Trump and Zelenskyy, and I think Trump has just explained the Russian position to Zelenskyy and got his feedback. And that feedback will now be carried by the US envoys to Putin to get his okay if there's some sort of compromise that's being offered. But it could well be that if Zelensky's comments are acceptable to the Kremlin and Putin signs off on it tomorrow, that a ceasefire could be called this weekend. I don't know. I don't want to get hopes up because it's been dragging on for ages. But, you know, in the last month, 2 months, a lot of progress has been made. And I think everybody's very tired of this war and would like to see it end.
You talked about the Donbass issue that really remains a sticking point. Do you think Putin will be willing to negotiate on that demand?
No, he's been adamant that he insists on taking the whole of Donetsk, the two regions, and they already have, like, you know, whatever it is, 85%, and that the Russian forces are making continued progress. The advances are getting faster. The Ukrainian defenses are collapsing. And that's one of the reasons why Zelenskyy might just concede on this final point and give up the last piece, because they're not going to be able to hang on to it militarily. They're going to lose it anyway. So they might as well get a negotiated settlement with some concessions now, while it's still possible, than just an outright military defeat. As I say, Putin feels like he's in a stronger position, time's on his side, and he doesn't feel like he needs to make any compromises at all.
Sure, Ben, thanks very much for your comments. Requested to stay on with us as we proceed. Viewers, Trump has once again now made his position clear on Greenland, stating that he is not going to pay anything. Meanwhile, NATO's top commander stressed that the alliance is continuously looking for ways to enhance its posture in the Arctic, particularly due to the growing cooperation between China and Russia in the region. NATO's military committee chair also revealed that the alliance is still waiting for direction on a potential Greenland agreement. NATO's focus remains on strengthening its strategic presence in the Arctic, with global tension rising in the region. Request Ben to join me back in the discussion here. Well, Ben, we did see how the events at Davos proceeded. Trump's speech over Greenland, he's of course made it clear that he might not use force, but Greenland is crucial not just for the security of the US, but for the entire Arctic region. How do you view this stance that Trump has picked up now, and also what kind of negotiations can we expect now with NATO?
It's an involved question. Trump has made it perfectly clear that he wants Greenland, and I would say more specifically, it's not the territory he's after, it's mineral resources. He alluded to those in his speech yesterday, downplaying the issue, but in subsequent comments, he's actually made it very clear that he's interested in the minerals. And if you look at all of the peace deals he's done, there's been like 8 or so. The mineral concessions have been part of at least 6 of those, and the most conspicuous one was the US aid to Ukraine when he first came into office last year was made dependent on getting a mineral concessions deal, which he got from Ukraine. So that's what this is all about. The threat of war and annexation is a hard negotiating position, if you ask me, going into this discussion. That for the US, a NATO member, to attack Greenland, which is a NATO member, is insanity, and it would destroy the alliance and undermine everybody's security, and in addition to irreparable reputational damage to the US. So I just think that's off the table. And what we're going to see now is a series of negotiations where some sort of concessions deal is going to be worked out. There's a possibility that the states might just buy the island outright. I mean, there's only 57,000 inhabitants. So if you gave everybody $1 million, they might change sovereignty. That could work. But it's been very awkward for everyone. NATO has been weakened. The assurances have been weakened. And the relationships with the EU have been wrecked as a result of this.
Yeah, but Mark Rutte is just saying he's asking for all the NATO allies to step up. Of course, no Western European allies joined even the Gaza peace board over the issue over Greenland. How do you think Trump is going to manage to appease his Western European allies to come on board to discuss his acquisition of Greenland? And do you think that's really going to happen as Trump desires?
He's not really giving anyone a choice. I mean, as part of his new, Donroe philosophy, that he's just telling people what to do and expecting them to toe the line, and then threatening pressure. And in this case, the pressure is that he's threatening to annex it by military force if they don't agree. And Rutte there is the head of nominally, an alliance, NATO alliance of 30-plus members, but at the end of the day, it remains an American-led organization, and Rutte has famously toed the line and what Trump has told him to do. And so, as I say, I think Europe is just trying to find some face-saving solution to get out of this mess. And the simplest way to do would be to sign off on mineral concessions on a normal commercial basis. But Trump is playing very heavy-handed, and like Putin, he's not prepared to compromise. And like Putin, he's in a strong position and doesn't see the need to compromise, and he's just literally taking what he wants.
Sure. Stay on with me, Ben, as we proceed once again. We have some more details coming in. Now, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that time is now right for the hard yards on Arctic security following US President Trump's decision to drop his threat of tariffs over Greenland.
The future of Greenland is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark, and for Greenland and the future of Denmark only. And Denmark is a very close ally of the UK, both in Europe and in NATO, and it's very important that we're clear about the principles applicable here. Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark must determine the future of Greenland.
Meanwhile, Swedish Prime Minister welcomed the de-escalation, noting that Europe's united stance pushed the US to back off on tariffs, also emphasized Sweden's readiness to help strengthen the allied military presence in Greenland and the broader Arctic region. Let's hear that.
USAs krav på att ta över Grönland, de kanske mildrades igår efter ett tydligt europeiskt stöd för Danmark och för Grönland. Vi kommer inte låta oss utpressas, var vårt tydliga budskap. Det tror jag gick fram. Alla uppfattade det som en stor framgång igår att det militära antydda hotet mot Danmark och Grönland nu är borta. Och att det inte längre står inför några omedelbara tullar. Men retoriken mot Danmark och Grönland, den fanns kvar även.
All right, Ben joins us back in the discussion here. Ben, how do you view these statements, especially from Keir Starmer, who's also refused to join the Board of Peace over Putin's possible inclusion there?
Well, several things going on here. First, the Board of Peace idea by Trump is a blatant move to undermine the authority of the UN, an organization he dislikes. He just withdrew from 66 international organizations, half of which are UN organizations. And that was set up in 1945 in order to form the bedrock of the international rules-based order that we're supposed to be or aspire to live under. And Trump's just running roughshod over that. And this Board of Peace conflict resolution initiative we've already got one. It's the UN. It's already working. 193 countries are members with a well worked out regime. And in good times, it's worked very effectively. When there's conflicts between the major members of the Permanent Security Council, then it doesn't work because of the vetoes. And Trump is bullying people into joining this. And notably, two of the first additions were Israel, a loyal US ally, and Belarus, which is just looking for rehabilitation into the international community after its sanctions. So I find the whole thing a bit, laughable and unsettling too, because the international order that we wanted to build is a good idea. And the trouble with the Peace Council is that Trump himself is chairman, and he also has a veto over everything. So it basically becomes a vehicle for American policy to dictate to the rest of the world. And Russia and China are definitely going to refuse this out of hand. But the Nordic states and France are also already said no. And so it's going to split the world into a them and us. Pro-American allies versus everybody else. And people like the Europeans are going to be left in the middle between these two warring powers.
All right, Ben, thanks very much then for your assessment of the situation for our viewers. Moving ahead now, viewers. Russian President Vladimir Putin has just announced that Russia is ready to allocate $1 billion from its frozen assets in the US in order to support the Palestinian people through President Donald Trump's Board of Peace initiative. Putin has emphasized that the funds, which was previously frozen under the prior US administration, would be directed towards the reconstruction of Gaza. Putin has further revealed that his proposal has been discussed with the US officials in the past, reaffirming that discussions on the matter would continue with US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner during their upcoming meeting in Moscow. Let's now listen to Putin's comments on the matter.
Мы готовы направить $1 миллиард в эту новую структуру Совет мира, прежде всего и главным образом для того, чтобы поддержать палестинский народ, направить эти средства на восстановление сектора Газа, вообще на решение проблем Палестины. Но я уже говорил, из тех средств, которые заморожены в Соединенных Штатах еще при прежней администрации, думаю, что это вполне возможно. Мы такие варианты обсуждали и раньше с представителями американской администрации, и сегодня.
All right, and joining me now in this discussion is Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute from Tokyo. Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining me. How do you assess the fact that Putin has agreed to send $1 billion to Gaza's reconstruction efforts, but won't allow any use of his frozen Russian assets for Ukraine's reconstruction?
In this case, we should remember one important rule of the President Trump's Board of Peace. Because 3 years, the country do not need to pay to join this, and after that they need to pay the money to join. So that's why the 3 years is the interval. But
Yeah.
this 3 years is, if the President Trump continued to be the president, the tenure is 3 years. So that's why during President Trump is the president of the United States, indeed the country which joined this board of peace do not need to pay.
Right.
So that's why the view from the President Putin do not need to prepare money to join this. So this statement is a completely different standard. President Putin want to say this because they want to retaliate against Europe. So that's why this money is the money, frozen money, or the Russia got from Europe, and European sides try to use frozen money of Russia in Europe. So that's why this is retaliation. So this is indeed the issue of the board of peace of the President Trump, but that is not true. President Putin want to retaliate. That's why he said.
All right. As far as the peace dialogue is concerned, Trump has just met with Zelenskyy in Davos, and now Kushner and Witkoff are headed to Moscow to hold a talk with Putin as well. What's your assessment of these latest round of talks? And do you think the question of Donbass can be resolved?
In this case, in the front lines, Russia is winning a little bit. This means that Russia want to continue war. So that's why even if they met in the Davos, indeed Russia does not have the will to end it. So that's why this meeting is the purpose of this meeting is, of course, to care about President Trump and extend this negotiation. At least the Russian side want to do that. So President Trump want to achieve the ceasefire between two, but Russia try to disguise something that Russia do not want to reply President Trump's will. On surface, they say the smile and the goodwill and the cooperative attitude, but the reality is Russia do not want to end this war.
Dr. Nagao, thanks very much for your comments. Moving ahead, viewers, a day after Bangladesh were told by the ICC that they would be replaced at the upcoming T20 World Cup if they continue to refuse to play in India, Bangladesh have remained firm in wanting their matches to be moved to Sri Lanka. This decision announced after a meeting in Dhaka between Nazrul, the BCB president, Aminul Islam and CEO Nizamuddin and several national team players means they risk not participating in the tournament beginning February 7. After an ICC board meeting, the ICC had formally rejected Bangladesh's request to play their matches in Sri Lanka ahead of India on grounds of security and gave them 24 hours to speak to their government and get back. The issue of security arose after the BCCI on January 3 instructed Kolkata Knight Riders to release Mustafizur Rahman, a Bangladesh player, from their IPL 2026 squad. Although no reason was stated for that directive, it came amid deteriorating relations between India and Bangladesh. And that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World.